My story and my job has been a little bit of, a very idealistic kind of nature lover working for a government agency.
So welcome to NRCC's 2021 Virtual Jackson Hole Wildlife Symposium. This video is one of a series of keynote conversations with leaders on human-wildlife coexistence across the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. This conversation features Doug Smith. Doug is a senior wildlife biologist at Yellowstone National Park. In 1994, he was hired as a biologist for the Yellowstone Gray Wolf Restoration Project, and from 1997 onward, Doug has been the project leader. Doug also runs the park's programs on bird, elk, and beaver populations, and prior to Yellowstone, he worked on Isle Royale National Park with wolves from 1979 to 1992. Most recently, Doug and co-authors published a review of the reintroduction of wolves in Yellowstone on its 25th anniversary, titled Yellowstone Wolves, Science and Discovery in the World's First National Park. So welcome to Doug, and thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here, Ben. I appreciate the introduction and excited to talk about what I think some key issues in the GYE.
Awesome. So our first question is just sort of trying to get to know you a little bit more and to get to know your perspective on sort of human-wildlife relationships. So just very broadly, in your work at Yellowstone, could you describe the character of the challenges of human-wildlife relationships that you focus on? And secondly, how has your skill set and background prepare you for this position?
Well, I think our most important thing is, working in Yellowstone National Park, which is the center of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. And it's all, I think, as you said in your kind of introductory materials, one system, but the park functions at its core. Grand Teton does as well to the south. And those two units being national parks are a preservation mindset. And that preservation mindset is embedded within people are part of it. So people are going to come and enjoy nature preserved as best we can. And so lately, our biggest challenge has been how do you do that with increasing numbers of people? And both parks, especially Yellowstone, are some of the best places in the world to view wolves. Just that's it. And the word's gotten out. We just finished our 25th anniversary last year. The word's out. This is the best place to come see wolves. And that's great. We want people to connect with nature. We want people to learn about nature, especially rare nature like large carnivores, wolves. They're charismatic, they're mysterious, they're sexy. And seeing them in the wild, free ranging is an unparalleled experience that can't be really duplicated many other places. So what that means is the flip side is more and more people are coming. But really the bottom line is we have to make decisions about what's best to protect wildlife. And with all the issues going on with wolves outside of parks, we decided inside of parks, they're going to be vigorously protected, and so that means from everything, especially humans. And that's our biggest challenge right now. And I come at this to answer the part of the question that deals with, what's your approach, what's your background, and how you view this is I embrace the National Park Service philosophy, but it's also a personal philosophy, lifelong kind of love of nature for as it is. It's getting so hard in a human dominated world, especially in the GYE, and the park's not immune to increasing population, development. Everybody wants something out of wildlife. They want more of it. They want less of it. They want to harvest it. They want to look at it. And it's all harder with more people and diminishing, how do I say it, real nature. And so you really can't save it until you know what real nature is.
It seems like you may have answered that question differently had I asked it 25 years ago.
I think the big problem is the problems wolves have always had, they still have. 50 years ago, no one would have thought you could have restored wolf populations to Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. Wolves have colonized Washington, Oregon. They slip into California now and then. Mexican wolves are struggling in New Mexico, Arizona. 50 years ago, all these things were unfathomable. And look at the progress we've made. But based on everything I just said, sometimes I wonder, have we made that much progress? And it is true that more people support wolves now than they used to, say, 50 years ago, but the same old issues are still present of should we have them or shouldn't we have them? Fundamentally, I've changed because, the study of something like wolves in itself is an inspiration that can carry you through life. And you don't really need anything else for that. But now I'm like, you can't do that anymore. You just can't. There has to be a conservation management policy angle, and that's just dispiriting. That we can't just learn about these things and then the answers take care of themselves. They don't do that anymore. You have to have a message. You have to have a marketing strategy. You have to have the way to get your message out. And I'm constantly dealing with people on both sides of the fence, which is good for me because I can go too far one way if not tethered back. But colleagues of mine are like, we need more. And I'm like, how are we going to get that in such a polarized world? The last few years have been really tough. You could almost say there's been a backlash against wolves. And what's it based on? Emotion, politics. It's not based on things that we've learned. I mean, elk and deer are at their highest level in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming history. Wildlife, or excuse me, depredations on livestock is well below 1%. Yet we're moving towards more draconian measures on wolf management. And how's that happen when you have that disconnect? Why is that? And so the discourse we have with elements of society that are pushing those management policies, you can't dig in yourself. And that's my nature too. That's what I like. And I just said I embrace the national park mission. But if you take that too far, you get a backlash. I actually see human attitudes hardening, but we all want the benefits of nature. We all want it. And, Jackson, Bozeman, Livingston, Cody, West Yellowstone, the trails are crowded, the public land's crowded. These critters don't deal well with crowds or 10-acre ranchettes, and for sure wolves. So those are things that weigh on my mind right now.
There's a huge conversation on how we think about nature, how people are involved with nature. Should we protect areas and not include humans? And we see this jump back towards protected areas given the 30 by 30 initiative and other sort of half earth initiatives. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how did the reintroduction of wolves sort of contribute to that conversation, and where are you at with your conception of framing nature and protected areas given sort of where we're at in the culture right now?
What concerns me is, a lot of the environmental news is bad, and actually scary. And I still don't see a real sense of alarm over that. And maybe it's just because this is my life and I want a lot of attention paid to it. And where's the all hands on deck when it comes to all these environmental problems that we have? And so I feel that wolves are a step in the right direction. And I feel they're a step in the right direction because, and this is hotly debated, but in general, it's true. But, there are native constituents to these Rocky Mountain ecosystems. And you take them out and it just can't be the same without them. So you do have to put them back together. And of course, they need to occur at natural densities. And there's not very many places that happens. Yellowstone happens to be one. And that's rejuvenating. that's uplifting. And it gets to be to the point of it's a lesson for us. We can do it. The wolves, they're a small message that we can do it because they're hard. Because a lot of people say society was better without them. It was easier. The hunting issue, the possible depletion of game populations, the ranching issue, although very remote and often cited one is the human safety and health issue, but that's totally manageable. Those are the big three reasons people cite. But we did it. And the world hasn't ended. Everything everybody said bad was going to happen kind of didn't. And so, can we take another issue, whatever it is, and NRCC is really good at coming up with them and getting success for that one. And then you build a little bit of a resume and you say to the folks who want it the old way, the manifest destiny, we take it over, we need to civilize it, and that's the way it needs to be for our consumption, our everything. And you go, it doesn't, there's more give and take. And wolves, I think, were the first issue because they were the critter we needed to get rid of to make the West habitable, for sure. And so the new West, that versus the old West, get rid of them, make way for the cows and the people. That's a tension point we really need to talk on. NRCC's leading on this. And I'm not saying you're doing a bad job, but you need to do more. We're living in a world just of constant bad news about the environment, and wolves are one of the few places, and there are others. It's just the wolves have been my life and job. That it's been okay. We did it, and now what's happening it makes me scratch my head. I'm a little bit worried again.
Looking back on an action that was or decision that was made 25 years later, and seeing how the actual outcomes are desirable is a really helpful story to tell people.
I mean, I really want, and I've met my fair share of people who really don't like wolves, wolf haters, if you want to call them that. And I used to throw a bunch of data at them. Really bad idea. Really bad idea. Because then you have an agenda. And in human interactions, people can always read that in you, that you have someplace you want to go and you're going to get there no matter what. And that doesn't make for persuasive conversation.
On a sort of broad level, on a regional ecosystem level, how do you think we as nonprofits and agencies are moving the dial to a better future for humans and wildlife?
Well, if it wasn't for NGOs like yourself, non-government organizations, I'm not sure the dial would move much at all. So I think that's pretty important. I mean, you guys are in a lot of ways the voice of nature that I can't be. Your guys' work is rich and deep, and it looks at the wildlife side as much as the human side, and kind of how our organizations and institutions are structured, and how we got to the impasse that we're at has also been, I think, a unique contribution of NRCC. Maybe your hallmark or your fingerprint and niche in the, and everyone talks about how many environmental NGOs there are in the GYE. I personally think that's great. It's a crowded field, but look, what's at stake. It's the greatest temperate zone ecosystem in the world. The more NGOs with the right idea in mind to save nature, the better. But I think NRCC stands out a little bit because of its age. It's one of the older ones, and this human wildlife connection. And then fundamentally, a big question for wolves is social tolerance, acceptance. And how do you get that? And I think NRCC is working on questions like that. How do you preserve nature and get people what they want to? Because, almost nobody wants to sacrifice anything, and I need to do better at that myself too. And then I just want to, because, and Susan Clark is deeply embedded in these kinds of issues, but the structure of institutions, how has that worked and how do we need to change it is brilliant work, really. because I think she's got a lot to say. And my only criticism is I would like to see it take off more. This place is truly special. You won't get the mix of carnivores, wolves, cougars, grizzly bears, black bears, coyotes, wolverines, lynx, bobcat, the weasel family that you get in the GYE. And, I'm not saying people take it for granted, but that's truly special. And there's a lot of country, and it's precious and it's beautiful. And so there's a lot, and it's our economic engine. And so there's a ton at stake, and so thinking through that and having patience and tolerance for these human battles, but at the same time, we don't have a lot of time either. They're pressing key battles that we need to come up with answers quickly. And NRCC is in the middle of that, and so I've enjoyed my 27 some years working with you guys on those issues since the beginning. And that mix of wildlife, human, social science, biology, I think has been irreplaceable. So I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to say that to you folks. And, wolves are a hallmark of wildness. And so don't forget that either.
Appreciate that. That's really helpful and affirming to hear that our work is being felt all over the ecosystem and in different ways. So thanks, Doug. That's it for today. So thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Yes, thank you, Ben, and thanks, NRCC.